Okay, picture this. It's the summer of 1945. Red Square is just overflowing with people for the victory celebration.
This is the peak of the celebration of the end of the war in Europe.
Exactly. And you have these Russian soldiers, they're exhausted, but they're triumphant, and they're throwing captured Nazi flags right at the feet of one man, Generalissimo Joseph Stalin.
The man who defeated Hitler. That's how the entire world saw him.
He was the small father of the people. The poetry written about him said he was higher than the high celestial spaces. I mean, across the globe, he really symbolized hope for a fairer society.
Yeah, and here's where we get to the core of it, the real paradox. This idol, this hero to hundreds of millions, is at the very same time one of history's greatest criminals.
Right. Let's dive right into that contrast. Because while the world is celebrating, he's already built this terrifying machine, the Gulag, which enslaved, what, an estimated 18 million people?
18 million, and that's not even counting the sheer cynicism of his other policies. This is a man who engineered famines deliberately, and those cost 7 million lives.
And his philosophy was just brutal. We have that quote, something like, "We will annihilate without mercy anyone who threatens with facts or even through thought."
Yeah, it's chilling. For Stalin, any human cost was acceptable for power.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the incredible story of Yosef Jugashvili, the son of a shoemaker who becomes this monster. And we're going to start in 1924, right after Lenin dies, when really nobody saw him coming.
Nobody. So we're in the middle of a Russian winter. Stalin is 46, and his title is Secretary General of the Communist Party.
A post that everyone thought was just, what, paperwork?
Exactly. It was purely administrative, appointing minor officials, organizing meetings. Compared to a figure like Trotsky, the intellectual, the war hero, Stalin was basically invisible.
It's incredible how much they underestimated him. One of his comrades called him the most outstanding mediocrity of our party.
They really thought that. They believed they could just, eliminate him if he got too ambitious. They saw him as a dull bureaucrat.
And that was his greatest strength.
That's precisely how he did it. The man who called himself Stalin, the man of steel, he was a master of secrecy. While Trotsky was out giving these grand speeches, Stalin was quietly controlling who got promoted, who got sent where.
So he was building his power base completely behind the scenes.
And he used Lenin's death perfectly. He seized control of the funeral, made himself look like the chief mourner, and at the same time, he maneuvered to get his biggest rival, Trotsky, exiled to Kazakhstan.
And by the time they realized what he'd done, that the Secretary General controlled the whole party.
It was too late. He was already in the Kremlin.
And once he's in power, his goal isn't just to rule. He wants to, completely remake Russia, build this radical communist utopia.
Yeah, and he felt Russia had to do it immediately. She had this deep insecurity about Russia always being defeated because it was, technologically behind.
Right, that quote, "Slowing down the pace means to lag behind. We in the Soviet Union, we don't want to be defeated anymore."
And that's the driver for the first 5-year plan. This brutal, unbelievably fast push to modernize, building skyscrapers, subways, dams, turning a peasant society into an industrial power almost overnight.
But a project that big needs a superhuman leader, which is where the personality cult kicks in.
Oh, absolutely. His portrait was everywhere, and he personally curated it. He even corrected his own official biography, adding a little handwritten note.
What did it say?
Stalin is the greatest captain of all times and people.
He wrote that about himself.
He did. And what's fascinating is the effort to maintain the myth. The man was only 5'3". He often wore wedge-heeled shoes or stood on little wooden platforms to look taller.
And the pock marks on his skin from smallpox.
All gone. Every official photo shows him with perfectly smooth skin. He literally airbrushed his own reality.
But that engineered reality, it started clashing with what was actually happening on the ground for regular people.
A huge clash. I mean, the industrial projects were impressive, yes, but the standard of living for the average person plummeted. All the resources went into heavy industry, not housing or food.
So people were starving.
There's this rare footage from the early 1930s taken in secret by Lady Mountbatten, and it shows the real Moscow, not the propaganda version. It's just endless queues, empty shops, malnutrition.
And for Stalin, the system couldn't be wrong. It had to be something else.
Exactly. In his mind, failure was impossible. So if people are starving, it's not the policy that's wrong, it's sabotage.
He needed culprits.
He needed culprits, and that's the birth of the political show trial. These weren't about finding truth, they were about officially pointing the finger.
And the accused were often the smartest people in the country. scientists, engineers.
Right. They were tortured for weeks until they confessed to crimes that never even happened. The cruelty was just so casual. We have this note he scribbled about a financial official named Brukhanov.
What did it say?
It's horrifying. He wrote, "Hang Brukhanov from the testicles. If they hold up, consider it acquitted. If they give up, throw them in the river."
Wow. And that same cruelty, it starts to bleed into his personal life, right?
It does. His son, Yakov, tried to kill himself. And Stalin's reaction was just cold contempt. He said he couldn't even shoot on target.
But the real turning point was his wife, Nadezhda.
Yes. She was deeply unhappy with the way things were going. She finally confronted him, apparently called him an executioner who was tormenting the whole country. And then she went into her room and shot herself with a revolver.
But that wasn't the official story.
Of course not. The official story was appendicitis. Suicide was treason. Stalin was devastated. But that grief turned into this bitter resentment. He said she abandoned me like an enemy.
And after her death, he becomes even worse.
He becomes merciless. And his first target is the peasants. He wants to force them into these state-run farms, the kolkhozes.
And when they resist,
He sends in the police to take every last bit of their grain. The instruction was literally to asphyxiate them into compliance.
which leads directly to the Holodomor, the famine in Ukraine.
Yes. In 1933, Ukraine was the breadbasket of Europe, but his policies created a man-made famine. And to make sure it was effective, he made it illegal for starving peasants to leave their villages to find food.
He knowingly condemned them to death.
In good conscience, as he saw it, 5 million people died. Half of them were children.
And at the same time, he's putting on this huge propaganda show for the West.
Unbelievable. He invites this French politician, Edouard Herriot, for a tour. They clean the streets, stock the shops, bring in actors to pretend to be happy workers.
And Harriet bought it.
Completely. He
Right.
went back to France and said Ukraine was like a garden in full yield.
So while millions starved, the world was being told everything was fine. The whole country was becoming a police state.
A giant police state. And the destination for anyone who stepped out of line was the Gulag. These were concentration camps, plain and simple, and they were set up years before the ones in Germany.
Who was being sent there?
Everyone, intellectuals, priests, ordinary people accused of anti-Soviet agitation, all turned into slaves in these brutal labor camps. I mean, temperatures down to minus 50 degrees.
And the projects they worked on were just absurd, like the White Sea-Baltic Canal.
A perfect example. 300,000 prisoners were forced to dig this massive canal with basically just pickaxes.
And the death toll was?
30,000 people died, 1 in 10. But here's the truly insane part. To meet Stalin's deadline, they didn't dig it deep enough.
You can't.
Not at all. Most boats could never even use it. 30,000 people died to build a useless canal.
Yet the world, especially communists in the West, they still worshipped him.
Willfully blind.
Yeah.
You have the French writer Louis Aragon actually writing poems praising the Gulag, calling it the rehabilitation of man by man.
It's just staggering. And that belief from the outside only seemed to fuel his paranoia on the inside. He starts to go after the old guard.
He decides to kill the entire generation that remembered the original revolution. I mean, almost every single man who carried Lenin's coffin in 1924 was eventually executed or driven to suicide.
Even his close friends, like Bukharin.
Especially Bukharin. They'd been friends for 15 years, but he was tortured, and he wrote this heartbreaking final letter to Stalin.
What does it say?
Just begging. I'm ready to drag myself on my knees. I beg you not to allow me to get shot.
And Stalin.
Ignored it. Bukharin was executed and just erased from history.
And this great terror, from 1937 to 38, it spreads to everyone. He's encouraging kids to denounce their own parents.
And the man in charge of it is Nikolai Yezhov, the head of the secret police. His motto was, when you clear a forest, chips fly off.
And they had quotas, right?
Yeah.
We actually have the documents.
It's one of the most terrifying things to see. A form with 3 columns for each republic. Executions, deportations, total. Party officials had to find people to kill to fill the numbers.
Just to meet a quota.
It resulted in an average of 1,000 people being shot every single day in 1937. It was industrialized murder.
And in the middle of all this, Stalin is just going to the ballet.
Regularly. He would go see Swan Lake at the Bolshoi, then go back to the Kremlin and sign the execution orders. Sometimes he'd add notes like, tighten the screw on this gentleman, beat him again and again.
And eventually, the machine even consumed its creator. Yezhov himself was purged.
He was tortured and executed. Stalin had eliminated everyone, real or imaginary, and replaced them with this new elite, the nomenklatura, who owed him everything.
Which brings us to World War II. While Stalin's busy killing his own people, Hitler is getting ready to invade.
And Stalin has just shot 20,000 of his best military officers. His army is terrified and leaderless.
So when the warnings about the invasion came in,
He dismissed them all as disinformation. He was completely paranoid. He had a German deserter shot just hours before the attack began. The initial losses were just catastrophic. 1,000 planes destroyed on the ground. His own son captured.
he nearly broke, didn't he?
He did. He went into hiding, but then he rallied. He refused to leave Moscow, and that was a huge turning point. But the real one was Stalingrad.
A battle that cost 2 million lives.
An unbelievable number, but crucially, it's where Stalin finally learned to step back and let his generals, like Zhukov, actually lead. And when the Nazis surrendered, the world didn't see the butcher. They saw the man who had finally defeated Hitler.
And the cost of that victory was 26 million Soviet lives.
26 million. And with that victory, he went to the Potsdam Conference and demanded and got half of Europe. But even then, the myth was at work. The films show him arriving in Berlin like a hero.
Look to reality.
He was terrified of being assassinated. He took an armored train protected by 5,000 police.
And even at the absolute peak of his power, the paranoia never stopped. He started the purges all over again.
Another 2 million people sent to the Gulag. He became violently anti-Semitic, sending his own daughter Svetlana's Jewish partners to the camps.
And there's that one final, just grotesque detail from his 70th birthday party.
It's maybe the worst of all. A 12-year-old girl named Natalia is brought up to read him a poem. She's standing right next to him.
And she has no idea.
No idea that Stalin himself had ordered her own mother to be shot just a few years before.
His end was as lonely and fearful as his reign. He died on March 4, 1953.
And he agonized alone for 2 days. His doctors and staff were literally too afraid to enter the room without permission, too scared they'd make a wrong move and be shot themselves.
So while the official announcements were praising the greatest genius of all mankind,
In the camps, in places like Vorkuta, thousands of prisoners got down on their knees when they heard the news and whispered, "May his soul go to hell."
So what do we make of all this? We have this man who promises paradise and delivers a death toll of at least 20 million people. The gap between the manufactured worship and the engineered suffering is just, it's stunning.
It really is, and I think it raises a huge question for you, the learner. You had people like the French poet Paul Éluard, who, even at Stalin's 70th birthday, was calling him a man of peace. The evidence of his crimes was out there for decades, so why were so many powerful figures, entire nations even, so willfully blind?
How could that ideological dream completely outweigh the reality of mass murder?
Exactly. It's a chilling reminder of how ideology can trump basic humanity.
We hope this deep dive helps you think about that critical and frankly terrifying role that information control and self-deception play in shaping our history.